to appear at Westminster Magistrate Court on 2nd of October on corruption charges during her time as minister. Former head of state Abdulsalam Abubakar and the president of Ecowas Commission visit President Bola Tinubu as former governor of Kaduna State Nasir El-Rufai cautions against war. Welcome to Politics. Today, I am Terry Ikumi, and it's a beautiful day in the nation's capital. Live on Channels Television, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Now, former head of state Abdulsalam Abubakar and the president of the Ecowas Commission were at the presidential villa today to give feedback to President Bola Tinubu, who is the chairman of Ecowas, on the outcome of the delegated visit to Niger Republic. Speaking to State House correspondent at the end of the meeting with the president, the former head of state who led a delegation to Niamey, capital of Niger, to negotiate with the country's military junta, says the meeting was fruitful, and he is hopeful that diplomacy will prevail in the end and the use of military force would not be necessary. Take a listen to what he said.
I must say that our visit to Niger has been very fruitful, and that it has opened an avenue to start talking, and hopefully we started talking. We made their own points, and then I made my report to the chairman of the Ecowas Heads of State and President. He will now consult with his colleagues, and then the ding-dong starts, and we'll get somewhere. Hopefully, diplomacy will see the better of this thing. Nobody wants to go to war. It doesn't pay anybody, but then again, our leaders have said, if all fails, and I don't think all will fail, we'll get somewhere. We'll get out of this mess.
Meanwhile, former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, wrote this on Twitter. He says that as ECOWAS beats the drum of war, I recall the 1970s rock classic by Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms, because a war within our sub-region is a war between brothers. Indeed, the people of Niger Republic are one and the same with those living in northern Nigeria. So let us bend over, therefore, backwards to avoid the civil war between brothers. Interesting. Now, the Minister of Defense, Alhaji Mohammed Badaru, and the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, were among the set of ministers who assumed office today. While the Minister of State, Bello Matawalle, assures that the ministry will spare no effort in building a strong defense apparatus capable of handling any threats, the Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru, promised that they will do their best to meet the mandate of the President, who, along with all Nigerians, are desperate to see that the security of the nation is ensured. He assures that for the sake of the country, he and the Minister of State cannot afford to betray the trust given to them by the President, and promises that within a year, there will be remarkable changes in the security situation of the country for the better.
From now on, I'll ask the service chiefs to give me a timeline and the requirements on how we'll begin to solve these problems one by one. And this timeline and the targets will be passed on to the President, and trust me, he will be monitoring us. And he doesn't have the patience to work with lazy people. So all our jobs are at stake if we don't deliver. And indeed, we have to deliver for our people. We have to deliver for the country. I adopt all the measures mentioned by the Minister of State, but mine is to re-echo our resolve and have the promise today with all of you that within a year or so, we will have remarkable change in the security architecture of this country.
We've had some very strong promise coming from the Minister of Defense, considering the criticisms that have trailed his appointment. Anyways, it's time for your daily political roundup. So stay with us.
The presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, believes that the Labour Party has all it takes to reposition the country. Mr. Obi was speaking in Owerri, the Imo State capital, during the flag-off of the governorship campaign of the Labour Party governorship candidate in Imo State. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a group of Labour Party youths are protesting the legitimacy of the Labour Party governorship candidate in the state, Mr. Ethan Achonu. The protesters are insisting that the case of who becomes the right governorship candidate of the Labour Party for the election in the state is still in court. A chieftain and former Ogun State governorship aspirant of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Mr. Segun Showunmi, has criticized the size of President Tinubu's cabinet, describing it as lacking the feelings of Nigerians in the face of current economic realities. Mr. Showunmi told journalists at the PDP headquarters in Abuja that a much smaller size of the cabinet would have been appreciated at this time of economic difficulties in Nigeria.
Young ideas, lean government, people that are a little bit more spontaneous, and a cabinet structure that tries to react to the Onrosai report that has been sitting on their desk, saying that you need to make government leaner.
Anambra State Governor Professor Chukwuma Soludo has announced palliative measures to cushion the effect of petrol subsidy removal. The governor, who was speaking at the Anambra State Executive and Legislature joint retreat in Agulu, Anaocha local government area, says his administration will continue to strengthen the synergy between the executive and the legislature arm.
And they include the hawkers, the wheelbarrow and truck pushers, the vulcanizers, the artisans, the Okada drivers, petty traders with capital of less than 100,000 naira, etc.
In Bauchi State, Governor Bala Mohammed has promised to ensure a fair and just distribution of the 5 billion naira federal government palliative to state. The governor was speaking shortly after a closed-door meeting with stakeholders on the distribution and implementation of the fuel subsidy palliative measures in the state.
Everybody is carried along so that we will do away with all these negative elements of suspicion and mistrust, right from the procurement to the distribution. There should be transparency, there should be fidelity, there should be sincerity in doing things.
Barely 2 days after the inauguration of the ministries in Abuja, a coalition of civil society organizations under the aegis of Speak Out Africa is asking the ministers to publicly declare their assets and help the federal government to reduce the cost of governance. The group told a news conference in Abuja that former governors who now serve as ministers should publicly declare a stop to the pensions in their state, as they cannot be collecting salaries and pensions at the same time.
Why we are aware that the political office holder to take the big chunk because everything stops at their table. We don't want to also ignore the civil service where the main work needs to actually be done.
Welcome back to Politics Today. Our focus today is a continuation of setting the agenda for the new cabinet. Yesterday we set the ground, we set the ball rolling on the conversation, but today we will be a little more detailed. We will try to speak on each of the ministerial positions as much as we can cover, talk about the qualifications of each person that's now been appointed, and look at the tasks ahead of them. I'm joined now in the studio by a development consultant and author, Mr. Jide Ojo. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Good evening, Nigerians.
I know that you've had your own reactions since seeing this list.
Sure.
So before we even talk about the details, because it's quite a huge task ahead of these ministers.
Sure.
And I can tell that they are even aware, especially because the president knows that he's been elected and has told them that I will be held responsible. So I need you to fulfill my mandate. So what do you think about the position so far?
Thank you, Terry, and good evening, Nigerians. Finally, we are there, or shall I say we are almost there, because 45 out of the 48 proposed have now taken oath of office and oath of allegiance, and their time has started to count. How they want posterity to remember them there's a blank slate before them. Let them write their names in whichever way, whether in gold or silver or in bronze. But most importantly, they are coming at a time that the country is in dire need of good governance. And it cannot be overemphasized that these are just lucky few. As I said on another media channel, APC has over 40 million registered members, if what we are told is anything to go by. And we have an estimated 200 million plus population. So if you pull out 45, even by any ratio, you know these are just very lucky individuals. And some of them are returning to, ministership. Someone like Wike, someone like Enikin Lopobiri, someone like Ali Pate, quite about 4 or 5 of them are just, they've served previously in either Goodluck Jonathan administration or in the immediate past. Even Festus Keyamo, was Minister of State for Labor and Employment. So experience matter in this game. And for whatever it's worth, one good news is that all of them are experienced in one way or the other. In fact, it was, I thank God I was able to watch through the screening exercise and also listen in on the citation yesterday by a jury in Gilali who moderated that session. So it gave me, inkling about their past. Some of them are multiple times commissioners in their state. In fact, you see the Minister of Trade Investment was immediate past finance minister, finance commissioner in Imo State. The Minister of Agriculture served in various portfolio in Borno State as commissioner. Several others. Professor Ali Pate was Minister of State, like I said earlier on. And these are technocrats in their own right. Let me put this out. There are so many people who have this misconception that technocrats are only people who are brought abroad or from the private sector. No. It's a misconception. I wrote in my column in The Punch about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I was diagonizing what does the law say about even appointment of ministers. And Section 147 sub 5 says you must satisfy condition that is similar to that of an aspirant to House of Representatives. What does that tell you? It means you must be a card-carrying member of a political party and be sponsored by that party. So all of these people are technocrats in their own right. Some are lawyers, some are architects, some are engineers, some are medical doctors, some are, they belong to different fields. I mean, there is none of them, to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't have at least first degree. There are those who have multiple first degree and multiple master's degree. So many of them are PhD holders, even though they may not be parading themselves as one. So when people talk about, we need a government of technocrats, you just need to moderate your expectation that, yes, technocracy is not mutually exclusive from being a politician. Like you introduced me, I've authored 3 books. I write column for The Punch in the last 12 years, but I'm also a consultant. You understand? So one individual wearing different caps. So that is it with many of them. So they have their jobs cut out for them.
Absolutely.
And like I said, they are coming at a time when there is no honeymoon.
Let's look at those jobs now. Let's look at these positions as much as we can take one after the other. Let's begin with the Ministry of Labor and Employment. It's now been manned by former Governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, whose qualification is a master's degree in law. I did say we'll talk about their qualifications to see if it matches the positions that they've been given, and then look at the tasks ahead of them to see if it's commensurate with the kind of qualifications they have. So a man who owns a master's degree in law and a former governor, and is now in the Ministry of Labor and Employment as minister, you'd expect that he'd be experienced enough, especially from the angle of being a governor, isn't it?
Yes, that would be an expectation, but I don't know whether he has expertise in, labor relations, as in managing conflicts. But it's something that you don't have to belong to the labor unions to acquire such skill set. He has dealt in the last 8 years with labor matters, at least at the micro level in Plateau State. I believe maybe the labor unions in Plateau will be able to say more about his dexterity in managing industrial relations and labor matters. But there are two of them. We must not lose sight of the Minister of State, Nkiruka, who is also I think she has a PhD. She has a PhD, but also 3 times House of Reps member. So both of them are quality personalities, and they also have the bureaucracy to guide them through. They have the bureaucracy. There are also many agencies under the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Labor and Employment that they can tap expertise from. For instance, there is Institute of Labor. There is this institute in Ilorin that trains labor union, that trains people in labor matters. I've forgotten the exact name of that. It's headed by Comrade Issa Aremu. So, they can draw from such if they need, and they can also hire consultants. So it's not like you must be a subject matter expert, as it were. Because if we want subject matter experts for all of the positions, then maybe that's the nomination should, or the recruitment should have been done a bit differently, which means you already have an organogram of how many ministries you want to have and what qualifications you are looking for each of those, and possibly you now reach out to your governor, APC governors or labor, or your party leaders and say, please, I need 2 medical doctors, I need 1 engineer, I need an architect, I need a lawyer. You understand?
And that would be a good way to go.
That will have been the best way to go about it, so that you actually don't these people, and you can find from all walks of human endeavor, you can find them even within the country.
But that would require some constitutional amendment, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, but it might be time-consuming because, again, this list, for whatever it's worth, is a compensatory list. That's it. You don't eat where you do not work. So these are people who worked for the Asiwaju presidency. And that's why some of them lost elections. They are found, habitation in being a minister. So it might be a bit tricky to just look for technocrats without those who really worked during the campaign.
That calls for a lot of questioning. But let's move on to the issue or the task ahead of the ministers of Labor and Employment, talking about the minister and that of state. Now,
yes.
Now, it's really disturbing considering the high level of unemployment in the country. Sure. And I recall that the last administration, the ministers had concerns as to how many jobs they can create. There's no specific data as to how many jobs were created, despite what they called efforts. So looking at the data where you hear that unemployment, 37.7, and it's likely to get up to 41% this year. What do you expect from the ministers to make sure that perhaps we don't get to 41, or at least we drop it from 37?
Terry, the truth is that unemployment, or employment as it were, is a cross-cutting issue. The Ministry of Labor and Employment does not actually do employment. It doesn't recruit. It just may create the enabling environment because if you want to do recruitment now, you go through the Civil Service Commission, Federal Civil Service Commission, or other recruitment, Federal Character Commission, or similar. So hardly will you say, okay, because you want to recruit, you go to Ministry of Labor and Employment. But employment issue is a germane and very critical issue at this point. Like you rightly pointed out, unfortunately, the number is rising because of even the ease of doing business, which is very tough. So you have a GlaxoSmithKline just shutting down. and leaving Nigeria. Many OICs, international IOCs, international oil companies, are divesting from Nigeria to go and reinvest it because of issue of security. So this is why I say it's cross-cutting. So you may have the best of intentions. You have this job description. You have the terms of reference. You have the key performance indicator. Everything is set. But if the environment, the operating environment is inclement, you can't provide the jobs. Look at how much, in my previous research on one of the articles I wrote about 1.5 months ago, I stumbled on the fact that Nigeria, under Emefiele, spent over 1 trillion on anchor borrowers program. Over 1 trillion. Now, where are the farmers? The farmers are daily migrating from those farmlands, from those rural communities to urban centers. That's why you say Abuja is flooded with people running away from banditry in Niger State, in Kaduna State, in Nasarawa State, in Kogi State. So, unless we fix the problem of security, because security impacts on formal and informal employment. So if the rural communities are stable, people want to engage in what is called self-employment. So I have this ancestral land of 2 hectares. I can cultivate cassava, maize, sorghum, rice on that land. But today, because of the rate of banditry taking place in those rural communities, many of them are fleeing to come and do commercial cycling in Abuja and other city centers.
So now, let's now move to the issue of security now. We now have a Minister of Defense and a Minister of State for Defense. Yes, we have had, the President also appointed service chiefs and an NSA. And then the argument of whether or not we need qualified people who are former military heads or military officers to man the position of Minister of Defense and Minister of State for Defense has arisen. So let's look at the qualifications of the Minister of Defense and the Minister of State for Defense. So Muhammad Badaru is the Minister of Defense and he has a BSc accounting. Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale, is a former governor, both of them former governors. Bello Matawale has a VTC, he graduated from VTC Bunda. I know that was a subject of controversy last year as well. And then he attended Yaba College of Technology, Lagos, and then later went to Thames Valley University, London. That's according to the information available to us. Qualification-wise, with regards to how important you say security is, what do you think?
Actually, I would have preferred somebody with military background for that position. But in the absence of none, it's still not out of place entirely to have these 2 gentlemen. My worry is just the frosty relationship that usually happens between Minister of State and the substantive minister. You know, Lanesik Festus Keyamo did a brilliant submission during the valedictory of Buhari administration on May 24th, I think, where he made a submission that it's unconstitutional to have Minister of State. And he backed it up with copious legal citations and also reasoning, legal reasoning, and even common sense. Now, what you find is that in this ministry, there are 2 elephants, 2 former governors. And how they work harmoniously together will make or mar their performance in that office. However, in terms of experience, one has governed Zamfara State for 4 years, one has governed Jigawa State for 8 years. I learned, he gave Mr. Alhaji Badaru gave an interview on BBC Hausa Service yesterday, where he said, quoted as saying that he was prepared for this because of the experience he garnered in the 8 years he was governor of Jigawa State, where he was able to ensure peace throughout his tenure. And truly, Jigawa happens to be like an oasis of peace in the midst of turbulence in northern Nigeria. You never will hear of kidnapping or terrorism in Jigawa State. As close as it is to Kano and maybe Bauchi and Kaduna. So whatever he did to ensure that peace in Jigawa in 8 years, if he could replicate that, and you heard him speak, where he was saying authoritatively that
within a
in
year,
the next 1 year, within the next 1 year, we will see significant improvements in security. That's one. Two, there are service chiefs, chief of defense staff, chief of army staff, chief of air staff, chief of naval staff, the national security advisors, and all the other security architecture are also there intact. So they complement. What Ministry of Defense does will be more like what I can call administrative lead, giving administrative lead in terms of budgetary allocations, to each of the military. How much does the Navy get?
But that's also very important.
It's important.
Because funding has always been a problem, has always been a complaint by the security heads.
Yes, that's why I'm saying it is for them to facilitate better funding for the military. Because the role of Minister of Defense and Minister of State for Defense is to complement what the service chiefs will be doing, to provide leadership for that security architecture, the face of which are the service chiefs and other security chiefs. There is a DIA, there is a NIA, there is DSS or SSS. There are several other security and paramilitary agencies who will also be looking for leadership with Minister of Defense. So theirs is to give that leadership. And don't also forget, they will have the full complement of working with the bureaucracy, who will have some subject matter expertise amongst their directors and even the permanent secretary and the rest. So it's not much of a concern that they don't have military background. They have governed their states, and as the chief security officer of their respective states, we can see the performance. If somebody beat his chest and said, in 8 years of my being in Jigawa, there was never any serious security breach. He must have done something right, because given the fact that all the neighboring states were more like under the siege of terrorism. So for whatever he did to make Jigawa safe, maybe you can replicate that. But I warn about frosty relationship between minister and minister of state. So there should be clear-cut delineation of duty. Where does the minister and what is the boundary for the minister, and what are the boundaries for minister of state? What will minister of state be dealing with? What will the substantive minister
But then how
be
important is it to have a minister of state? Because you talk about frosty relationship and also the illegality of a minister of state. So for the Ministry of Defense, which is already having too many agencies and the concerns of working together, and now you talk of a frosty relationship, how important is it to have a minister of state for defense or otherwise?
I really, I've said, maybe I won't emphasize that. I took objection to the number of ministers we have. It's bloated. I mean, there's no two way about it. Nobody can convince me we need this number. I have postulated, look, in US where we copy presidential system of government, US population is about 350 million. US has only 15 secretaries, which is equivalent of our ministers. 15 driving that country. What do we need 45 for, or 48 as it were? This is needless. Okay, so you have Minister of Defense and Minister of State. Then you have Minister of Police and Minister of State Police. For what? What do you need that for? We don't even need Minister of Police. We don't need Minister of Police Affairs. To the best of my knowledge, if we strengthen the Police Service Commission, which is a constitutional body that has its work cut out, that will have been okay for us in terms of money. Now, you look at the expenditure for police now. Bulk of it will be used to fund the administrative work that these ministers will be doing. And I don't see the value addition of having a Minister of State for Defense or Minister of State for Police, or even the need for Minister of Police Affairs in the first place. Because we have Police Service Commission, we now have Police Equipment Trust Fund. So we don't actually need it. But because it's job for the boys, you need to compensate quite a number of people who help you to win election. You possibly can overlook and say, well, let it go.
Very well then. And we have a lot to talk about with regards to these positions. And when we come back from this break, we'll be joined by a senior advocate of Nigeria. Please stay with us. Politics Today will be right back.
The chairman and members of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Students' Loans and Access to Higher Education cordially invite the general public to a one-day legislative summit on the students' loan. Date, Thursday, the 24th of August, 2023. Time, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Venue, Conference Room 034, ground floor, House of Representatives Building. The Students' Loans Act 2023 can be accessed at www.yaga.org/studentsloansact. Please send your memorandum to nigeriastudentloans@gmail.com and submit 10 hard copies to the office of the committee clerk if you would like to make a presentation at the summit. For further inquiries, please contact the clerk to the committee on 0808-578-3950. Signed, Honorable Tersia Ugbor, Chairman, Ad Hoc Committee on Students' Loans and Access to Higher Education. With compliments of the Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. This announcement is supported by Yaga Africa and the European Union.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Access Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
In today's world, our lifestyle, both at work and at play, depends on connectivity. Our connectivity depends on the devices that make it possible, and these devices depend on electric power. When power fails, our life shrinks, our work drops, and our joy dips. JRB Solar Energy Systems are here to ensure that we enjoy uninterruptible power, uninterruptible joy. Whether you're running a business, an institution, or just a home you return daily to rest, JRB has got you covered. No project is too big for our super digital inverters, long-lasting batteries, and efficient solar panels. Go. Dream on. Change your world. JRB Solar Inverters, batteries, solar panels, solar streetlights, and more. Telephone 0906 752 1111. Email sales@jrbsolar.com. With JRB, the sun's gonna shine on everything you do.
I came too early. He might think I'm desperate.
Is this dress even fine?
What if he doesn't like me?
He's here.
I'm his spec.
Joe? Same Joe.
Same Joe, minor differences. Same Joe, minor differences? Don't even think about judging Joe, because you're probably just like him. Why is the name on your business bank account Ahmed Aminu and not your business name? Same business, different name, right? Stop impersonating your business and get an account in your business name with MoneyPoint.
Whatever it takes to make sure you have a business account opened in your business name, we'll do it as your sure banker.
See trouble. Is this not the same me?
Open a bank account in your business name with MoneyPoint.
At Philomath University, Abuja, we achieved giant strides, impacted lives, strengthened partnerships, and delivered world-class education to our students. As we surge ahead on our mission to transform education in Africa, we are enthusiastic and adrenalized for the future, as we know you are also.
Philomath University. Unlock your dreams.
The chairman and members of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Students' Loans and Access to Higher Education cordially invite the general public to a one-day legislative summit on the students' loan. Date, Thursday, the 24th of August, 2023. Time, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Venue, Conference Room 034, ground floor, House of Representatives Building. The Students' Loans Act 2023 can be accessed at www.yaga.org/studentsloansact. Please send your memorandum to nigeriastudentloans@gmail.com and submit 10 hard copies to the office of the committee clerk if you would like to make a presentation at the summit. For further inquiries, please contact the clerk to the committee on 0808-578-3950. Signed, Honorable Tersier Ugbor, Chairman, Ad Hoc Committee on Students' Loans and Access to Higher Education. With compliments of the Speaker of the Federal House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. This announcement is supported by Yaga Africa and the European Union.
The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies proudly presents the International Women Conference themed Women Representation in Governance in Nigeria, Issues, Challenges and Way Forward, a platform for diverse stakeholders to come together and discuss the critical issues surrounding women participation in governance. Special guests expected at the conference include President of the Senate, Distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, CON, Speaker, House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, PhD, First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Distinguished Senator Oluremi Tinubu, CON, Keynote Speaker, President, African Women's Development Fund, and former First Lady of Ekiti State, Mrs. Bisi Fayemi. Other participants include women politicians, female parliamentarians from Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Uganda, civil society organizations, and other key stakeholders. Date, 23rd and 24th of August, 2023. Venue, NAF Conference Center, Ahmedu Bello Way, Jabi, Abuja, Nigeria. Time, 9 a.m. daily. International Women Conference, Empowering Women, Shaping Governance. Convener, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, Director General, News. Announcer.
When you think of Nigeria, do you think of its potential? Then you might be who we're looking for. We want people in the business of doing good. People with startups or proofs of concept that directly or indirectly take on one or more of Nigeria's social issues. If you want to win a 30 million naira grant, expert mentorship, and access to an exclusive network of business leaders, apply now to be a contestant on our exciting new social enterprise competition show, Fund It Forward. Go to www.funditforward.tv for more details on the show and on how to apply. Fund It Forward, a channel's original series.
Welcome back to Politics Today. The conversation is still on setting the agenda for the new cabinet. I've been speaking with Mr. Jide Ojo, who's a development consultant and author. And now we're joined by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Adeleke Agbola. He joins us from Lagos. Mr. Agbola, thank you very much for joining us on Politics Today. I understand he had to go through some traffic challenges.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Adam.
Before we go into the cabinet issue specifically, we're taking them state by state. Mr. Ojo had raised an issue, which is with regards to the legality or necessity of a minister of state. What do you think about that?
Well, it is, on paper, it is beautiful to compare Nigeria with United States to say, oh, there are only 15 ministers. But you have a constitution in Nigeria that says you must have, from each state of the federation, at least one person as a minister. So automatically, with 36 states and Abuja, you are talking about at least 37 ministers in the first system. So the issue is that the president has there's nowhere in the constitution that is limited the number of ministers that the president can have. The president is in command of his cabinet. He knows how many men or women he needs to be able to run the country well. So he has a partial carte blanche as to how many ministers he can have.
Now, beyond the number of ministers,
he's also circumscribed.
Beyond the number of ministers, I was asking, based on what Mr. Ojo had said, Is it legal and is it necessary to have a minister of state?
Yeah, that's why I was coming to. The president determines how many ministers we have and what designation is going to give to them. The only constitutional provided for minister is the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. That's the only one that is created by the Constitution. Others. So the issue whether I call them Minister of State or Cabinet Minister is a function for the president. In the US that we have mentioned, for example, sometimes some positions are given cabinet status by the President of the United States. Sometimes the director of the CIA is made a cabinet member. So there is no law as such. In Nigeria, there's nothing legal about cabinet or cabinet minister. It's just a matter of designation. The important thing is that they are ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So there's nothing constitutional about that.
Very well then, let's continue our assessment of the ministers based on their qualifications and their portfolios, as well as looking at the tasks ahead of them. We had just talked about the ministries of labor and employment, as well as defense. So now let's talk about the Ministry of Education. The Minister of Education is Tahir Maman. He is a professor of law, as a senior advocate of Nigeria and a former Director General of the Niger Law School. He has a Minister of State who is Tanko Sununu. His qualification is obstetrics and gynecology. He is a former chairman, House Committee on Healthcare Services. What do you think about these two men and their qualification with regards to the portfolios which they now have?
Well, the substantive Minister of Education, as you rightly pointed out, is a professor of law, Tahir Maman, has been a dean of the Faculty of Law, has been Director General of the Nigerian Law School, and is a senior officer of Nigeria. By whatever parameters you want to judge it, he is eminently qualified to be the Minister of Education. The other gentleman who is the Minister of State, Mr. Sulu, is also qualified because the truth is that it's a political post. Being a minister is a political decision. And much as we would love to have people who are conversant with the particular portfolio they are given, the issue really is whether you have somebody who has the administrative acumen to manage a large organization. That's what you need. It doesn't matter whether it's a medical doctor, whether it's a pharmacist, whether it's a ETC material. The issue really is that does he have the mental competence?
So coming from 8 years with a Minister of Education who says that he had no idea how to run that office, and then seeing our education system decline just about on every level, and then now UNESCO reports that there are 20 million children out of school. What do you think that, or how do you think that the two men in charge now can address the issue of the declining education system?
Well, they've got their jobs cut for them because, as I've said, Professor Tahir Maman is eminently qualified, and he knows the problem of education in this country. He's from the northern part of this country. He knows the number of people who are out of school. And it's just a matter of managing the scarce resources that is available to any minister. Any public officer now has very limited funds to manage. And the issue really is that the efforts being made in the university environment, for example, to make the students pay at least a portion of the fees to run universities. Most of the schools are decrepit, they are run down, and we need money to do so. So these ministers, we must find a way to talk to the people, to talk to the students, to talk to the lecturers that we are in a crisis. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Wherever you go, whether you're in private universities, you'll be shocked at the level of poverty in the school's environment. I went to University of Ife, and I went back some few years ago, and I'm surprised the hostels are just in a very bad situation. So we need somebody. We need them not to come up and say things are bad, and that they must also give us their plan on how to turn things around. And then we have to appeal to ASU and all the other academic teaching environments that this is not a time to go on strikes at the drop of a hat. They must work together with these gentlemen to make sure that Nigerian education can be a thing that we can be proud of. We used to be a net exporter of education. People used to come from Ghana. They used to come from South Africa to come and study in Nigeria. Now, even Benin Republic is taking students away from us. It's really very bad.
Let me come to Mr. Ojo now. You have, I think, said some things on the decay in the education system, if I recall correctly. And I think you're also concerned about 8 years lost and the level of decay for that reason. Do you agree with him with regards to the qualifications of the Minister and Minister of States now? And what can the next ministers, what can these ministers do to address the issues that are bedeviling the education sector?
Yeah, Professor Tahir has said, is eminently qualified by every parameters conceivable. He was former Dean of Student Affairs at University of Maiduguri, former Dean of Faculty of Law, former DG, Nigeria Law School, Professor of Law. So he combines law and academia, so he's a senior advocate of Nigeria, so everything to boot. But even the Minister of State, medical doctor, you can't take it away. The issue is about, would there be proper funding? And if the funding is not coming from government, what do? I went to University of Lagos, and I tell you for free, when the late Abdulkarim Adisa, who was the Minister of Works, came to our school, he went from some of the hostels and he was almost weeping. He said, and we are condemning these students of unrest. How can they rest in this kind of very dilapidated structure? As at that time, I'm talking of early 90s. So you can just imagine how the rot has festered over the decades. Now, there's practically no federal universities that is not affected, or even the states. Many of them depend on TED fund to fund, the capital projects of their schools. But can we continue to make egg without breaking can we make an omelette without breaking an egg? ASU does not want any increase in any increase in tuition. But at the same time, the resources available to government is very scarce. And this is why I also objected to the huge number of ministers we have, because funding will now be worse off. How do you share the little resources among about 34 ministries now from 28? We have 28 under Buhari, so it has increased to 34. It's like having 3 children. You can't feed them very well. You now decide to marry more wives and have more children. So how will everybody get a fair share? And education, let me shock you, Terry. There are 22 agencies and departments under education. 22, the highest of all the ministries. Do we need that number? Which is why it will have been ideal to have a lean and smart government where you even have less than that 28, so that the little funding can go around. You can effectively increase, funding for health, funding for education, funding for defense, funding for security. But situations where you have now increased exponentially the number of ministries without, when we know that our debt portfolio now, we are spending about 96% of our revenue to service debt. So where do you want to get the funding to fund education? So that is the dilemma. How do you ensure proper funding without increasing tuition? And even the so-called student loans that the president think is a silver bullet, which they said will take effect from September this year. I do not, given the law that I've read, that to anybody wanting to get a loan under that student loan law it's like a camel passing through the eye of the needle.
I think that's been reviewed. I think that's...
If it has been reviewed as the president signed...
It is being reviewed.
It's being reviewed, but the Senate is on recess. And they are coming back maybe in September or October. So, and they said the take-off date is September. Because you are talking of about 6% interest rate on loan. You are talking of 2 years postgraduate when people will just be out of national service for the repayment to start. How do you not? You don't want to increase tuition. You are saying that you are making available student loan, but this loan is not friendly.
Well, we're almost out of time now, but let's look at perhaps, if not the most important aspect of what we may discuss here tonight. It is the economy. And for those who know Mr. Wale Edun, some say there's no need to question his qualifications. He's a former finance commissioner for Lagos State. So, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Adeleke Agbola, let's talk about Mr. Edun and the responsibilities ahead of him. What do you think that he should, how do you think, rather, that he should go about addressing the ailing economy that we found ourselves?
Well, for Mr. Wale Edun, who is a well-tested technocrat, we know him very well in Lagos. It's our own export from here to the federal government. He has the brain, he has the capacity, he has the work rate to be able to do something good. But for him to do so, he may have to clash with the politicians in government. Because for us to be able to move forward, we must cut down the waste in government. We have too many people. My co-discussant was talking about having a lean and smart government. We don't have it now. We have a bloated government. And you have to show the people that there is actually an economic crisis in Nigeria. Mr. Wale Edun is not just the Minister of Finance, he's also the coordinating minister for the economy. So he must go where other boosts there to trade. We have the Rosario report, which has not yet been implemented. It has to be implemented. My co-discussor just mentioned that there are 22 parastatals under the Ministry of Education. It's not necessary. What is the Speaker or the National Assembly doing with about 50-something special advisors? It is unnecessary. We cannot be telling people that the economy is bad, and then we are having people just being at their portfolios that have no impact on the people. So the economy is in a very bad situation, in a very bad shape. Before I left my office for this interview, I asked my staff, what do you think we should do? And they said that since the streets are very, very mean, people have no money. Of course, government cannot put money, cannot be paying salary to everybody, but you have to provide a conducive environment. You must make sure that things are functioning. You must have a streamlined tax regime. Tax people who need to be taxed. All those people flaunting the champagne, the gold they are purchasing, they must be taxed appropriately. You can spend your money anyhow, but the government must take its own shares. And then when that money is collected, people must know that it's being used for purposes that are for the benefit generally of the people. So Mr. Edun has a lot of work to do. He's capable, we know that, but he needs to help both with the politicians.
Okay, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to take a closing statement on this matter, because one other aspect is the concern on how we can raise revenue. And the World Bank already says that Nigeria must utilize its resources if it is going to improve its economy and attract foreign direct investments.
Well, very good advice. That's why I trust Bondele Alake will be able to do well in Ministry of Solid Mineral. There is a lot of leakages there. You know, senior advocate Femi Falana spoke about it on your channels. Was it yesterday or two days ago? You know, the leakages in the solid mineral sector, the leakages in the oil and gas sector is enormous. The oil theft alone, if you are able to block oil theft, I tell you, Terry, we don't need to borrow money. We will not need to borrow money. Then the leakages among the government-owned enterprises, NPA not remitting enough, NIMASA not remitting enough. We know what happened with JAMB, the previous registrar of JAMB, Nobody knew JAMB was a revenue generating agency until Professor Ishak Oloyede got there and is remitting billions back to Federation account, even FRS. So the issue of Treasury single account, the effectiveness of Treasury single account, the issue of, ensuring that all the revenue generating agencies remit maximally, most of what they collect on behalf of government, and this idea of a money deposit bank keeping federal government money and loaning money, the same money back to government should stop. So we need a complete overhaul of that. So between the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of Economy and Minister of Budget and National Planning, they have their work cut out. Don't even forget that we are approaching September, and it is expected that 2024 budget should be ready before the National Assembly will come back from recess, so that it can be passed and we can maintain the January to December financial year that Buhari gave us as a legacy.
Mr. Jide Ojo, I'd like to thank you very much for your time.
Mr.
Jide Ojo is a development consultant. And I also had Mr. Adeleke Agbola, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for your time, and sorry for the stress you had to go through to make it to the program today. Well, as we say goodbye, the British police say that former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diezani Alison Madueke, has been charged with bribery offences. Head of the National Crime Agency's International Corruption Unit, Andy Kelly, says Alison Madueke is alleged to have accepted bribes during her time as Minister for Petroleum Resources in exchange for awarded multiple million pound oil and gas contracts. She is alleged to have benefited from at least £100,000 in cash, among other things, which include private jets and luxury holidays. Well, that's all the time we have on Politics Today. Very big thank you for your time. I am Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.
The Peacelessly Ministries presents its 10th annual conference, Kingdom Intervention Conference 2023. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are you ready to break every limitation in your life? One word from the Lord can change your world. Kingdom Intervention Conference 2023, a healing and prophetic conference. Ministering veteran Dr. Randy Clark